You guys know I love Kingdom Come Deliverance too. And I love talking about Bethesda and laughing at Bethesda's consistent ability to just make an otherwise fantastic experience kind of less so. And so the one and only Nick Tech went and made a video. We all know where this is going. What if Bethesda made KCD 2? We all know exactly what's about to happen, but let's watch it anyways because it's going to be funny.
Get ready to pick up your broken teeth with broken fingers. Oh, I'd like to see that. Come on, then. You scum!
I'll kill you. It was him.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. Load screen to wash. Like, how else would we get the blood off your skin? You have to wash. Oh, you got to repair your weapon. Load screen. Yep. Dude, what's funny with all this is I actually went back for a video we were doing. I went back and I found a review of Skyrim from 2011. And in that review, it was from like a big outlet. It was like GameSpot or IGN. They complained about the loading screens. They were like, the constant load screens to go in and out of buildings and for the different zones can get kind of frustrating and can break the immersion a good bit. Like, it was an actual thing they mentioned in the review from over a decade ago, and it's still a problem. But this is why, like, when you can make a video like this making fun of a developer for a very self-explanatory meme of the constant load screens, at that point you would think that that would be like number one priority. Okay, guys, we get it. Okay. It's like with KCD 1, where they saw all the constant complaints about the bugs and the jankiness. What do? They deal with it. They fix it. They don't go, that's part of it. That's part of the experience. They go, we're going to fix it. We're going to figure it out. And then they work their asses off to do it. My desire with bringing up all of these Bethesda things and still joking about it, memeing on it, is that eventually Bethesda learns from it and doesn't make the same mistake and improves. Will that ever happen? I think we all kind of have a feeling probably not. They've already said that they're making Elder Scrolls 6 in the same engine as Starfield, so it's going to be the Creation Engine 2. They're not even putting a 3 on it. It's going to be the same thing. Yeah, Wilfredo, desire equals wishful thinking. Yeah, it's why maybe this is just a fundamental difference between me and you guys and some other like fans of Bethesda stuff, because I feel like most of you guys in chat are on the same page as me. I don't think coddling a multi-million-dollar company that's owned by a multi-trillion dollar corporation, I don't feel like coddling them actually helps them. I don't feel like talking to Todd and glazing him actually helps, you know? I just don't. I think if you're real and direct about it, you can actually find some success. Let me see, or at least make a change. Is this the clip?
Was that this is a Bethesda game. And I didn't mean it derogatory, right? But we've talked about it, and you've seen me on this show talk about it. I love Starfield, right? And you said something I thought interesting when we were talking about Fallouts, where you're like, oh, well, you know, the show is this person's favorite entry, which is great. And I, you know, blah, blah, blah. I said how much I like Starfield. The chat over here is then on fire of people who loved it or hated it or whatever in between, right? My question for you is the reception at launch of Starfield. How does that affect you and the team? Because what I thought was different about the lead up to Starfield was that you were all wearing your hearts on your sleeves and saying, this is the game we've always wanted to make. This is like something that means so much to us. And so when you get there and you get a game that is then polarizing to this level, What was the takeaway? What was the office like on launch day, review day, all those?
Honestly, I think that's a solid enough question. You know, of course, Greg is allowed to like the game. I'm not saying Greg has to come out and be like, oh, so I hate Starfield, Todd. What's the deal? We're not saying that. I think asking Todd directly, it's polarizing. There's some people who love it and some people that hate it. What do you think of that? I think that's an interesting question. I think the bread and butter is in the follow-up, which we'll see here in a second, but an interesting question. How does Todd respond to the question of the feedback, the people that were really frustrated with some of those design choices, with some of the stuff they did in Starfield and the direction that they took?
Well, there's a few things, and thanks for asking. The number one that we're always concerned with is how is the game holding up, right? What's our bug level? What's the crash rate? So first of all, we were over the moon with how kind of the actual data we were getting back and how the game was performing on a technical level. That one to us is always sort of most important on the dev side.
So the first thing they were looking for when reviews dropped and players got access to the game was whether or not the game was crashing and breaking. Given Bethesda's history, I can't say I'm too surprised that that was their first thing they were looking at and worried about. But to their credit, Starfield was probably the most polished Bethesda game at launch ever. It was. It still had lots of problems. It still was buggy and ran into its own problems. But it was the best among the not great day one launches that Bethesda's ever had. So I'll give them that.
Number two was the amount of players.
So again, just choosing not to respond to the question of feedback and the polarization of that feedback, or the polarized nature of it, moving from the game is polished to we had a lot of players.
Kind of set a record for how many players that we had in a game. Obviously, Game Pass is a part of that.
Of course.
You know, but to see the amount of people playing and like, okay, we've had more players at launch than we've ever had in our careers, and the game is holding up really well. It's a really joyous moment for us, particularly after how long the game took. On the review side,
okay, cool. We've gone through it ran well or better than we were braced for. And there were a lot of players. Okay, now he's going to mention the reviews. Specifically, Greg's question was they were polarized. Some people loved it. Some people really didn't like it. What do you have to say about the polarization?
and we've been through this, so it's not sort of new to us. What's new is it's a new IP, so you know that we're going to be doing some things differently than we've done before. And obviously we had people who loved the game, both on the review side, and people who liked it less.
Oh man. I mean, I'm always going to point back to this clip because I find it hilarious, because it's the most corpo speak ever. It's like he's not even allowed to just say there were some people that liked it and some people that didn't. He's not even able to say that. It has to be they liked it or they liked it less, but you still have to say they liked it. It makes me feel like Greg's face in this picture, in this freeze frame. That answer makes me feel like this. I'm just, what are we doing? They didn't like it, Todd. It's not that they liked it less. They didn't like it. Okay? Just is what it is. It's all right. Like, if I don't like cottage cheese, you don't say, well, David loved the cottage cheese and Luke loved it less. No, I didn't love it. That's the problem. It was not that David gave it 100 and I gave it a 50. I was at 0. I was at minus 50. I actively disliked it. And it's just such a funny framing. Because again, part of this is corporate speak, but with these types of interviews, the goal is to get an insight into how Todd thinks and views these things. And when you take him at his word, instead of like trying to hand wave it away as corpo speak for the sake of marketing, you start to understand why nothing has changed. Why they've spent decades with this engine that has been criticized by journalists and gamers all along for its various shortcomings. And you start to understand why there's been problems with efficiencies. There's been problems with certain directions being taken, why they've lost a lot of senior talent since the release of Starfield. It all starts to kind of make sense when you just take him at his word, which is that he doesn't seem particularly bothered by it. And he's reframing even negative feedback and critical feedback as people that just liked it less.
I think the majority of our reviews were in the 90s, which, look, that's great. I don't want to ever be in a world.
So we're only going to talk about the good reviews. There's no acknowledgement of like the negative feedback and the critiques that people had.
Where that is not a great place to be in terms of kind of critical reception, particularly in a year where there's so many amazing games out.
Sure.
But obviously, look, we see the feedback. We see a lot of players saying, this is what I want out of a Bethesda game, which is to explore a world in a certain way. And Starfield didn't give me that. I prefer the way it's done in Fallout or Elder Scrolls, and perfectly understandable, right? In terms of, hey, this is a different experience. And I do think, for us, particularly me going into a science fiction game, I want to be able to land on all the planets. I want the game to say yes to us, knowing that content is going to be different than you've seen from us in the past when you're exploring.
I mean, again, the point was that it wasn't different. It was worse. That's the point. There were things in Starfield that were worse. The repeated locations that you run into multiple times, that was worse than when all the locations were unique in previous games. And so I think that's the problem with this, is that you can tell that there was a point in development where they decided to embrace the fact that there were going to be constant load screens. And so even within the cities, they had constant load screens. Even within, individual locations, there's constant load screens. That, for them, they just didn't, I think they became numb to it, frankly. I'm guessing that's what happened. They just stopped seeing it because they were developing the game. And so they just weren't aware of how jarring it would feel for players. And it was also like an element of, I think as a result of that, of just a complacency and a lack of push to deal with it. I'll let him finish.
A landscape. And that's some of the trade-offs we'll make to do what we think makes, a science fiction game like this, that's kind of based in this kind of fiction and reality, to make it what it should be. And, each of the franchises should kind of be its own thing.
For sure.
And so obviously, look, there are areas that, the maps or some other things, gameplay options, that we're adding, other display modes on console that people have asked for. And we want to do all that stuff. Take some time, but we're excited to get stuff out there.
Well, like you said, what we got.
Yeah, remember I said the follow-up is going to be crucial. I would hope to hear a follow-up doubling down on well, to be clear, Todd, there's been some critiques of things like the load screen problem, the fact that the places you land on the planets are quite small with repeated locations, where people feel like that is actively worse, not an alternative, but it's actively worse than what you've been able to provide in previous games. And it's even detrimental to the sense of exploration, because you can land on any planet wherever you want, except like in an ocean. But what you find there is rarely interesting and is often the same thing you've seen elsewhere. So how do you respond to those people who feel like Starfield is an active step backwards? That would be an interesting follow-up question. What's the follow-up question we get?
And more DLC, or an update getting announced this week, you said, a couple days from now?
Shifting forward to promoting the update that brings, I think this one brought city maps, because there weren't city maps when the game launched. I don't know what it is. In the games industry, there's not really, follow-ups are just not a thing that the press does. It's really weird. I don't know what it is, but it's also just media in general, I guess, but it doesn't feel like anybody really presses, But I think it's because this interview was not about like pushing Todd or asking Todd those questions. It was about promoting the Fallout show, promoting the Starfield update. It was about, I think, did they touch on the Indiana Jones stuff? Todd on Baldur's Gate 3, most replayed, Fallout 76 promotions of that. technical leaps in the industry, new Obsidian and New Vegas. Like it was about promoting the show. So I think that's probably why. But I mean, this is what's always amazing to me is that Todd will go on an outlet like this, and 9 months later, you know, they're struggling to crack 97K on the interview. I think I did a total of 2, maybe 3 videos covering different chunks of this interview, little pieces of it. And cumulatively, those videos have like over 900,000 views. So if you're trying to get in front of an audience, you'd think that you'd push to get in front of the audience. But again, that's because that's not what they're looking for. Like what they're looking for is the promotion and the promotional side of it, because they can go on kind of funny and they know that they'll get exposure through subsequent clips, reactions, and videos and stuff talking about it. But actually going and doing the interview, it's much safer to go on friendly territory. And like I said, I thought the question from Greg was good. I thought that was a good question to ask, but there was no follow-up, and it immediately shifts into just another promotion of something else they're doing. So yeah, Maddie's interview has 500K. Exactly. Like I had some notes on Maddie's interview. I thought that there were, by the last half of the interview, I felt like it was just kind of falling apart, but I thought it was still a good interview on the whole. And I thought it was really interesting that, you know, his video Pops Off does so well compared to some of the other ones that they've done. But we're going to push. I'm going to have, you know, especially going into the rest of this year, we're going to be pushing to try and do some bigger interviews with people like Phil Spencer, see if Todd wants to come on and play chess. Imagine if we did that. Imagine if I get Todd on for an interview, but I'm like, okay, we decide if I get to talk about Starfield with you, if I can beat you in a game of chess real quick. Who's laughing now?
Shout out to the chess club.
Wouldn't that be funny? If you get Todd again, Luke, pull up a save file with broken quest line. Imagine if I got that interview. I get the interview with Todd and I'm like, so now that I have you, then I pull up Starfield, share my screen. I can't figure out how to reload this gun. It won't reload. Do I need like a DLC or something for it to work, or am I doing something wrong? Oh, maybe do I need a paid mod? Do I need that, Todd? Do I need armor for my horse, Todd? That would be funny. We could troll the crap out of him. We would try to be, of course, like we would do the interview and all of that, but there would be plenty of opportunities for funny little jokes for sure. Do you like my jacket, Todd? Yeah. I got you some Fallout rum. Do you want to have a shot with me? Oh my God. Yeah. Hold on. I have to get my interview questions out of my canvas bag. Oh, I never got it. I forgot. Oh, bummer. Dude, we could have so much fun with it. Oh, now I really hope that happens. He'd just be like, yeah, this isn't working. We're gonna be good. Yeah, we're gonna leave. Oh man, I don't know if I'd be able to keep a straight face during that. Man. Yeah, no, I'm like, hold on, let me share my screen real quick. I just want to ask you a question. Let's see, where did I put the thing? Okay, I can't find it. Anyway, so what I was going to ask you, we can have fun with it. We do a little bit of trolling, Anyway, I love this wallpaper so much. Oh, man.
He took my thing.